Hello and welcome to some Dark Souls. I thought I would do some gameplay recording. Essentially, I was starting a new character. I actually just got a little way into the new character, and I thought it'd be interesting to YouTube it up, basically, and record myself playing through and kind of talk about Dark Souls, because it's a fantastic game, and I think whilst it has a lot of people who think it's a great game and already play it a lot, there are some people who don't know much about it yet. So this is just going to take you through me playing a particular character. So starting from scratch here, this is actually me doing a preview of what I did during character creation. This is a second run through for the video. I actually recorded the actual start of the game proper first time before this, but I thought I'd just go back through and show what I did, because I want to do a playthrough without a shield. Now, if you're starting Dark Souls for the first time, I would definitely not recommend doing that. But essentially you can see me here in character creation, picking the basics, picking a class, picking a starting gift. Those are the most important things, the rest is cosmetic. Classes are kind of interesting. There's a whole range of different classes giving you initial sort of play styles. The main thing to bear in mind with that is actually your choice doesn't matter too much as the game goes on. Regardless of what you pick, you can play anything, you can adjust your play style however you like. So just pick something you like initially. As a starting gift, I would recommend the Master Key on your subsequent playthroughs, or if you're going to follow walkthroughs or guidelines to help you get interesting items initially, because the Master Key allows you to progress into some areas which you won't otherwise be able to unlock without playing through the game more heavily. It's not going to let you cheat, but it will let you bypass some areas you don't actually need to play through if you know where you're going. So otherwise, and there's a lot of detail in this screen showing you all sorts of stats and equipment and so forth. You don't really need to worry about that yet. You just pick something that sounds good to you. Again, in gifts, I really would recommend the Master Key, either that or Twin Humanities. The other gifts are not really as useful as you might imagine. There's a lot of different options and things that sound intriguing, and it actually transpires as you play the game a bit more. You discover that in fact most of them don't really mean anything. They don't do anything at all in some cases, or they're useful in a tiny way in a tiny part of the game and you could live without it. So the gift is definitely worth picking carefully. But I did want to show the intro because
in the age of
it's worth seeing.
The world was unformed, shrouded by fog. A land of grey crags, arch trees, and everlasting dragons. But then there was fire, and with fire came disparity. Heat and cold, life and death, and of course, light and dark. Then from the dark they came and found the souls of lords within the flame. The first of the dead. The Witch of Izalith and her daughters of Chaos. Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and his faithful knights. And the furtive pygmy, so easily forgotten. With the strength of lords, they challenged the dragons. Gwyn's mighty bolts hewed apart their stone spears. The witches weaved great firestorms. Nito unleashed a miasma of death and disease. Seath the scales betrayed his own, and the dragons were no more. Thus began the Age of Fire. But soon the flames will fade, and only dark will remain. Even now, there are only embers, and man sees not light, but only endless nights. And amongst the living are seen carriers of the accursed dark side.
So it is rather opaque, as you may have gathered. I think there's also some interesting translation into English issues. Obviously, this game's producers are not English natively.
The dark sign brands the undead. And in this land, the undead are corralled and led to the north. Where they are locked away to await the end of the world. This is your fate.
He's a helpful chap. So that fellow there has given you the key to escape your fate, which otherwise would be presumably reasonably unpleasant. So at the very start of the game, it starts reasonably gently for the first minute or so, and then dumps you straight into everything that you need to know to actually operate the game. So these marks on the ground, the orange ones, are actually messages that you can read that will tell you what to do in terms of controls and all that sort of thing. Having done this before, I won't bore you with that, but I will jump around like a fool and fail to actually hit monsters with any degree of success, really. Because just because I've played this a fair bit doesn't mean I'm any good. I should actually point this out very heavily now and probably later. I am not an expert Dark Souls player. There are many people far better at this game than I am. But it is extremely good fun. It actually took me about 30 hours to get into. Before then it drove me completely insane because I didn't quite get it. It's a very punishing game. It really does. It makes you learn how to be good. If you don't want to learn how to be good at a game, if you don't want a challenging game, this is not the game for you. This is proper old school style, hardcore, if you like. It's a stupid word, but there we are. It's a proper gamer's game. So yeah, if you want that sort of thing, this is the perfect game for that. So this is the first notable monster you meet, and also the first boss. It's almost impossible to kill him right now, so the best thing to do is to run through that door, just like that. You can face him again, and in fact you will face him again momentarily, but at that stage hopefully I'll actually have a weapon rather than the remnant of weapon which is all we've got right now. So that's a shield. Normally, in any conventional and useful sense, you would equip the shield right now. I'm not going to for this playthrough because I really want to try playing this game without a shield. I just played an extremely heavy armoured, hard character with a big two-handed weapon and a massive tower shield, and it was fantastic fun, but it almost felt really rather too easy, especially as I've played the game a few times now. So I really want to try playing this game Ambi, essentially. This does mean that I'll have to get good at parrying, which is an absolute nightmare, and I suck so hard at. But it's going to be fun. Those grey doors can indicate that you're entering just a new interesting area, or they may indicate there's about to be a boss, so it's worth being wary when you're going through fog doors. So this is just me wandering around to illustrate that actually there's a guy in there, and we need to somehow get to him. Luckily there aren't really many puzzles to solve in this game, so this one, even though I seem to be making a show of being terribly surprised, it's actually not that hard to solve. You just run up here, probably get killed. If you jump off like that, then massive boulder knocks the wall down, and you're good to go.
Oh, you. You're no hollow. Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. I wish to ask something of you. You and I were both undead. Hear me out, will you? Regrettably, I have failed in my mission, but perhaps you can keep the torch lit. There is an old saying in my family: thou who art undead art chosen. In thine exodus from the undead asylum, maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know. Well, now you know. And I can die with hope in my heart. Oh, one more thing. Here, take this. An Estus flask. An undead favorite. Oh, and this. Now I must bid farewell. I would hate to harm you after death. So go now, and thank you.
So our obliging friend here has just given us probably the most vital item that you're going to get at the start of the game, the Estus Flask. That is your only real means of healing. Essentially in Dark Souls you have limited life, the red bar on the screen. It goes down very quickly, as I demonstrate by being completely inept. And the only way you can revive it is to drink Estus. You have 5 doses. You can only get more doses by returning to the bonfire, at which point your health will be restored to full, and also your Estus will refill back to maximum. Also at that point all of the monsters reset except bosses. So if you've just tried to kill your way through a bunch of stuff and you're low on health, you probably don't want to go back to the bonfire, because you'll just have to do it all over again. You do end up repeating bits of this game over again. Much less so as you get decent, but rather more so at the start. But it's a good opportunity to actually learn how to fight the monsters, and you kind of have to do that. As once you actually learn how to beat each one, you'll start to observe all of its moves, you get to know everything the monster does, because they really do telegraph exactly what they're about to do really well with the animations, and that's just so brilliantly done in this game. And you have to be watching out for them, especially against the boss monsters. Speaking of which, we're about to face our first boss here, hence the big ominous fog gate. Best thing to do here is to hold down attack as you jump off, which I completely do but fail to hit the monster at all, so we're actually going to have to do this hard way. This chap isn't as hard as he looks. I mean, he is completely lethal, he can kill you in 2 hits, as I just demonstrated there, but the main thing with this guy, he only has about 4 or 5 moves, and as long as you stay behind him, you're good. There are actually rather similar monsters to him elsewhere, thankfully not too many, but there are several. So the main thing is to just watch your positioning, with all bosses really, watch your positioning and watch what he's showing you he's about to do. So in this case, I know that if I'm on one side of him, he's going to try and attack me on that side, so I can use that in order to get hits in. Or I can just miss and flail around like a moron. He does have more unpleasant attacks than these. He's actually being quite nice to me at the moment. He isn't doing anything really awkward. The worst place to be with this guy is directly in front of him a good distance away, because he does have a very large club and he can kill you pretty instantaneously if you're in the wrong place. But as you can see, he's actually really easy to kill. I am two-handing my weapon here. That's partly because I don't have a second weapon, but really, against bosses, if you know you're not going to get hit, two-handing is a really good way to go, because it does increase your damage. It also means that you can avoid, if you have a weapon that requires very high strength, one of the main stats in the game, you can, if you're two-handing, the strength requirement is lower, so you can actually get away with using something larger in two hands, but you won't be able to wield it one-handed, you'll just flail around in a comedy fashion.
Only in the ancient legends it is stated that one day an undead shall be chosen. To leave the undead asylum in pilgrimage to the land of the ancient lords.
Once forgetting the name of said land.
Lordran.
Lordland. Lord Ran. Sorry, Lord Ran. It's not Lordland. It's Lordland, let's face it. I'm not quite clear what an ancient lord is. I imagine it's a sort of god-like, sort of mysterious figure. It's kind of a great old one, legend type level of creature, as far as I can tell. It is worth pointing out, just out of interest, that all of the things you see in the intro are actually rather relevant to the game. It's not an exam question, you're not going to fail the game because you didn't remember the intro, but it's interesting if you find the lore appealing, and you can read a lot more about that stuff online. So as the helpful massive banner says, you do want to be... bonfires are where you do everything. They're where you rest and recover, they're where you level up, and you can also help that process. You can actually improve the amount of Estus you get at bonfires through certain mechanics as the game goes on. Now that's just me signalling the way that you actually go at the start of the game. It actually took me ages. When I first started playing this, I could not find the frickin' start area. I just couldn't find it because I'm dumb and don't look around properly. But it's kind of non-obvious, so really just look towards that via aqueduct, the sort of duct thing. That's the way you go. So you can just go there. You can just not do any of this messing around. What I'm doing here is I'm just picking up a few free souls which happen to be lying around. There are some other things you can pick up in the start area, a few items. We'll grab a couple of the obvious ones even though we don't really need them. This little area is actually important later. It's actually a shortcut that isn't open yet, so there will be a lift here, but there isn't at present, and we can now jump down. We won't be able to... well, actually you can later, I'm pretty sure, but you can jump straight down here and pick up a few bits and pieces. So cracked red eye orbs are handy for PvP, which I suck at even harder than I do PvE, so I won't be doing any of that. You can grab a talisman, which is handy if you actually want to go sort of faith miracly. And a homeward bone, which is very handy, teleports you back to your last bonfire. You can buy them, so it's not like you only have these 4. They're not that expensive, and they can save you a bit of running. Now here we're just going to... and there are some nasty skeletons there. The game actually kind of makes it look like that's the way you're supposed to go at the start. You really don't want to go that way. You might run around there, as I do, just to you know, pick up a few items, but you really don't want to go that way. It is quite possible to get through there. There are some cheesy things you can do running down in that direction. If you go down into the catacombs, for example, you can pick up an affiliation to a particular sort of guild, if you like, and or form a covenant, as they call it in Dark Souls, and you can pick up a very ridiculous item that way, which will make the game massively easy. You can just look up Gravelord's Sword if you're interested in that particular route, but to be honest, it does remove a lot of the challenge from the game. I did another slightly cheesy thing on my first playthrough of this. I picked up an amazingly good sword just because I happened to find a way of doing it, but I felt so guilty about it that I stopped using it almost immediately and did things properly. It really is worth actually doing things, you know, the hard way, if you like, because also as the game goes on, whatever snacky weapons you have at the start, you will just get completely owned later on in the game if you're relying on those as a crutch and you haven't developed the skills to actually win with. It won't be fun for you. So it's better putting it in at the start. And the start area is actually quite nice to you. You know, the monsters are actually quite pleasant. The worst thing is just that you don't understand how things work. There is a lot of that in this game. Very little is explained. There are a couple of wikis online. If you search Dark Souls wiki, you will find both of them. They're both worth reading, but they do have a lot of spoilers in. So if you're the sort of person who wants to play through and, you know, just be mystified, discover things as you go, you know, maybe actually enjoy the sense of discovery, then exhaustively reading the wiki isn't a great plan. but both of them do have good starting guides, which at least explain things like the stats and you know, elementary things like that, which are kind of good to know. So at the moment, as I say, I want to get, I want to be using 2 swords, so, and I don't really like this sword because different weapons have different attacks, and actually here what I seem to have done is managed to attract a skeleton which I can't get rid of. If you have monsters too near a bonfire, then you can't use the bonfire, which is a problem. So I'm just going to leg it up here and then exit the game as it happens. Quitting the game, oddly in Dark Souls there are a few things where if you quit the game and something hasn't worked properly, quitting it and restarting it does actually sort things out. It's bizarre. It's things that are supposed to have spawned but haven't spawned. If you've just got a kill and that's supposed to cause an item to drop and it hasn't dropped, quit and restart, it'll probably drop. It's an interesting phenomenon, but there we go. But yeah, so because I don't like this particular sword, because each weapon has different features, different attacks, different combos. They're not radically different, just a few little subtle differences. There's a move you can do which is a kick, which is really useful against opponents with a shield, especially if you don't have a shield. If using this sword, you instead get a very stylish maneuver that doesn't involve any sort of kicking and isn't very good against people with shields. So I want an actual different sword. I want an actual longsword as my main weapon, and I'll use this as an offhander, just because it's about the same length, and because it does look quite stylish. I haven't actually found it that easy to parry with, so as an offhander that's going to be interesting, but nonetheless that's my plan. So this is one of the shortcuts you can take if you've got the master key. You will go down to this area anyway, the new Londo Ruins. You'll trip over in the sort of second third of the game, I'd say. You can, again, the thing about Dark Souls is you can go anywhere that you've got the nerve to, essentially, as many reviews have said. You can try whatever you want in many ways. The game does lock you off from crazy areas, and it locks you off for plot reasons, but if you've got the guts, you can go do whatever you like. There's a few freebies around here, one of which I just forgot there. But we're going to take a shortcut that is only available if you have the master key, just because that lets us skip through to a guy we can actually buy a decent sword from. And also because that means that, because I'm not going to go through the proper start area, I can play the start area as if I'd literally just started. I'm not going to be leveling up or anything along those lines, so this is kind of a way of me just getting to Ambi without having to spoil the opening, if you like, so I can do it fresh properly. I am going to be slightly cheesy and upgrade my main hand slightly, because frankly playing without a shield is a frickin' nightmare, and I'm not that great at this game. I finished it a few times. I've played a bit of New Game Plus, which is where you restart the game after you finished it with the same character, and everything's harder, but you keep all your existing stuff. But I'm not an expert. Now this guy has a couple of really snacky items that, for different reasons, you may want. There's a really nice shield there, for example. If you grab it, he will wake up, it may kill you, but you'll just respawn at the bonfire. We only want that free soul, and then we're going to go this way. I wouldn't necessarily advise doing this route if you're just starting the game. The only plus about it is it does mean that you can upgrade your weapon. Even if you're doing a sword and shield run, it does mean you can get a weapon upgrade from the start. Yeah, you really don't want to get hit by that guy's lightning. And I nearly walked off the cliff because I'm an idiot. And he's just doing a running lightning attack, which luckily missed me. That one missed me. This really isn't that tricky. Once you've got the basics of Dark Souls, out of the way. So we're essentially doing a little loop around a couple of areas of the game, and we're going to end up not that far from the start of the game, but this means we don't have to go through the start of the game, and we don't really have to fight anything this way. We just got to dodge a couple of things. This is probably one of the least used bonfires. The only time I've ever used this bonfire, really, is if I'm doing this sort of back way run. It doesn't otherwise lead to anything particularly exciting. There's a guy around this corner you really don't want to mess with. Not at this point. That's him. So we're just going to run all the way up here. This is the Darkroot Basin, which is an offshoot of the Darkroot Garden, which sits behind the Undead burgh, which is a sort of undead city that you're actually going to be starting off in. The names aren't really that important, but just out of interest, a sort of guided tour, that's where we are, and we're just heading up towards the garden itself. These little fellas show up periodically, and if you're not completely inept, which I am in this instance, I mean that was just appalling. I think I actually killed him pretty easily when I did this run initially, but I didn't obviously video that, so yeah. If you do kill those little fellas, they're worth killing because they drop a couple of little upgrade items that otherwise are quite limited in supply. You will find them elsewhere, but it's good to have another source of them. They don't show up all over the place, there's only a few in fixed locations. So definitely going left here, otherwise we're going deeper into the garden, avoid the tree man. And we're going to head into the burgh. Parish, sorry. Parish. That chap is a Titanite demon. He's not actually that bad. He's a pain in the ass, and he's not very fun to engage when you're just starting out. If you're starting out and you need to kill them, I'd recommend finding a bow. There's actually a bow on the way through that route that we just took, which you can pick up fairly easily. You can just get a bow and shoot him to death and dodge his lightning. It's far easier than trying to engage him in melee, which is a complete nightmare. It's fine if you're heavily equipped, but it's not worth the constant deaths.
Don't get yourself killed.
So I just bought myself a longsword. So it's probably worth saying at this point, I mean, souls are your currency and your XP in Dark Souls. Everything is about souls. So I had 2,000 souls from the intro, essentially, and I just spent 1,000 of them buying a new sword. So now I have 2. I've got 1,300 souls left. Now, since I went and picked up a few of those white, little glowy souls of lost undead, and proud knights and various other things, I can use those to move souls, because they're kind of crystallized souls. It's not a vast XP, but it's kind of nice free XP. It's particularly valuable at the start, or if you're just shy of a level, having those things lying around in your inventory can be very handy, because if you're 200 XP down, rather than having to go kill something, you can just pop a little soul and upgrade your XP, really. So I'm just going to grab this bonfire, and then I'm going to use those items, and we'll grab ourselves a couple of weapon upgrades. If you do go this way, you can you essentially cut out some of the start of the game. Again, I wouldn't recommend it because you're missing out some of the get used to the monsters areas, but you can just play on from here. You're not missing out anything critical. But as I say, I'd go back to the start. And in fact, if you do want to do this run, you're feeling courageous and you want to save yourself a walk, don't touch any of the bonfires except the one at the start, at Firelink Shrine, which is where I was having trouble with that skeleton and pointing at the viaduct. And if you've been down to the chest that we found at the bottom of the elevator shaft, and you've found I think the name of the item now, but we picked them up anyway. You can actually just teleport yourself back to that bonfire, so long as you haven't touched any other bonfires in between. So that can be handy. So I just equipped all those to my little quick access button. It's just far easier than picking them one at a time. It's also worth watching what you've got on that little quick access bar, because you cycle through it with the D-pads if you're using a controller. You can, if you accidentally use the wrong item rather than drinking Estus, it is so irritating. So I'd really only stick things on there which are absolutely vital. So we're buying Titanite shards. They're a reasonably rare drop, but it's Titanite shards and a small amount of souls will make a blacksmith upgrade your weapon. There are far more interesting upgrades as you go on through the game. There's fancy lightning and fire, various other enchantments you can get, or you can just put everything into fantastic damage. But that all comes later, and it's slightly trickier to apply, it's actually easier to read a wiki on weapon upgrading than to try and fathom it in game. You can only upgrade certain things in certain areas, you need to have certain items. It is possible to work it out, but so you can do that. You can quite happily just work it out as you go. But yeah, so that's me set up. I have a sword that I can use that's reasonably decent and an offhander, and I'm ready to go. so that's the end of this initial intro. I will start from here on with the actual proper start of the game, as if you could start with Ambi. It'll be just miraculous. So until then, I'll catch you next video.